So, you know how I've wanted to be like an astro mechanic, or not, an astrospace engineer. That's what it's called.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm kind of wavering. Okay. So, we had a paper recently in English class, and the story we wrote it about was called Miriam, and it's basically there's this old woman, and it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe 1800s, a little before that, in England. Died a long time ago, but the book doesn't specify why. And she's just kind of living her life on repeat. Like, every day is the exact same. And then all of a sudden, when she's going to the theater, this little girl appears, and her name is Miriam. Both their names are Miriam, actually, but she's referred to as Miss Miller, and because that's her last name. And the short version of it is Miriam gets Miss Miller to buy her a ticket because she doesn't have anyone else to buy her a ticket, and so they both watch the movie together, and then, or the play, whatever it's called, and then Miriam ends up following Miss Miller to her house, and once Miss Miller's already almost in bed, Miriam knocks on the door, and when she tries to, she ends up getting fed by Miss Miller because she insists, and then also takes her brooch, which her husband gave to her for her anniversary.
Did she steal it or was given it?
She took it in her hand, basically, and kind of begged for it. She would have taken it anyway. Like, you can kind of tell based on the way that the author was describing it.
Uh-huh.
So, the old woman, she's an old woman. She's not like she could forcefully take it from her. She's like, she denied it at first, and then she was like, I can't stop you. And so,
wow.
Uh-huh. And then,
that's sad.
I know. And then she kind of, I don't know, like, she had like a biological reaction to that, because like her husband was dead. That was one of the only reminders of him that she had. And so she ended up like collapsing onto the floor. Mm-hmm.
Aww.
And then Miriam comes and like kneels down next to her and says, "Kiss me goodnight before I leave." And Miss Miller's like, no, excuse me. And so Miriam walks over to the kitchen and breaks her vase that she bought on the way back home. And then she leaves, and then a few days later, Miss Miller goes shopping, and she feels like there's this man following her. Or, like, she sees this man too, and like, he tips his hat to her sometimes, and little times that he recognizes her. And then also, when she arrived home that night, Miriam came back and did something similar. Like, she didn't break anything, but like, Miss Miller had kind of given up at that point, and she was just like, yeah, do whatever. And so she ended up eating a lot of Miss Miller's sweets and stuff like that. And then when so a few days later, again, she came and knocked on the door again at night, and Miss Miller refused to let her in this time. So eventually, like, she was probably ringing the doorbell for about 10 straight minutes, and then after another like 20 minutes, Miss Miller went and opened the door to check if she was still there, and she was. She basically forced her way in, not really, but kind of. I mean, she's a young, strong girl against an old woman. What do you expect to happen? And then,
I'm very interested to find out how this story relates to your choice of occupation.
Well,
I know.
I'm getting to that point.
Okay.
I'm not a psychopath, if that's what you think.
I don't at all. I'm truly interested.
Does that make you tell my story? Okay. So she comes in and like basically sits in the living room, and Miss Miller's like, I'm going to bed. And so she has this dream about Miriam dressed in white with kind of like a halo, more like a crown of leaves on her head. And she's leading this long like group of people, like a crowd, and Miss Miller is in the crowd. And so she asks why they're following her, and then everyone's just like, I don't know, she's just so pretty, she's so enchanting, you know? Like, I just, like, and there was mainly a bunch of old people too, which is kind of creepy. Also, so, this is kind of out of the story, I forgot to mention this though. So, you know how it was the old man that was following her before? Miriam said that the previous person that she was staying with was an old man. I mean, maybe that's related, maybe it's not. Just figured I'd mention that, just thought of that.
Okay.
Anyway, back to where I was in the story. So she's leading this group of people, and they're all just kind of mesmerized by her, and like, why not follow her? We don't have anything else to do. And so they're just following her, and then she wakes up. Well, when she wakes up, Miriam is standing right there, and she's described as like being very threatening and being kind of still and quiet and kind of like she's a predator about to attack. And then she says,
That's not
hello.
creepy.
And then the book ends. That's the hello is the last word in the entire book. Mm-hmm.
Dear God, please explain to me how this relates to you.
So, we had to write a paper on our thoughts on that, and we did it in partners. So, my partner was one of my best friends, actually, which is really fun. And
what's your name?
No, she's comfortable having her name, so
I want to know who it is. Tell me. Okay.
I'm just gonna call her Tiffany. That's not her name, but we're just gonna call her Tiffany. So, Tiffany, here's where it comes into what I want to be.
Okay.
So, I have a hobby with psychology, okay? And so, everyone was talking about her being a psychopath or her being schizophrenic. And schizophrenic is possible. Psychopath, they don't know anything about psychology. I'm just gonna say that right now. Psychopathy is more like you don't have enough, like you have a certain lack of emotion, and the whole thing, like you're insane, kind of leads to it's not emotionally painful for you to commit an insane deed as much as it would be for a normal person. I say normal because no one's really normal, but you know, whatever. And so that's what psychopathy is, or you know, yeah. So everyone's calling her a psychopath. I'm like, she's not a psychopath, okay? She obviously has emotion, because there are a few parts of the story that I left out just because I didn't want to take forever. And so I'm just talking to her about, like, my best friend, about how there are all of these possibilities, like, I forget one of them. Okay, I'm just going to talk about the main one. So we did talk about, like, schizophrenia in the beginning, because it is possible that she's just hallucinating and she's really committing these things on her own and she just doesn't know it. But another thing I was talking about is how they were, or I mentioned and we ended up concluding in our paper, is that Miriam and Miss Miller, Miss Miller's real name is Miriam Miller, and that's why she's called Miss Miller, right? So they share a name, and there's a condition called DID, which is basically like multiple personality disorder. And so if you're traumatized as a child or something, sometimes this happens. And basically the theory behind it is your personality is not fully developed yet, so your mind uses that to its advantage and basically forms a new personality that will hopefully be able to overcome whatever torture you're going through. Mm-hmm. So, like, some of them are animals, like when you're like in chains or something and you're like, I could never break out of these as a human. Like, a snake is a big thing with that. And so a lot of times, like, there are people that will have personalities that think they're a snake, and because that's their mental state, is that it's true. And so then, like, there are a bunch of weird technical things with that. But also, Miss Miller, they share a name, which is a big teller, and she's also, Miriam is in the form of a child. So if something had happened, which is unspecified, then it is very likely that the personality would be permanently as a child, because it formed as a child. And Miriam would be violent, like breaking the vase or making threatening comments, if she was a personality containing all those memories, because something has to contain those memories. And so a lot of times there will be like a storage personality kind of thing that contains all the terrible memories. So she might remember being tortured or whatever happened, and Miriam, in anger for some reason, might have been the one who killed Miss Miller's husband, and no one knew about it because it wasn't Miss Miller, it was Miriam. They're two separate personalities. Like, I don't know everything about my mom because I can't read into her mind, although I do know a lot, I don't know everything. And so, even if we had the same body and she was just another one of my minds, it would be this exact same situation. Like, you're basically all just friends or family members. You're not the same person. And so, like one of you, basically, to sum it up, one of you could have depression and the other one could be perfectly normal, and that won't cross over at all. So, I was basically concluded with that because the person following her could have been like the protector personality, which is another common thing, because like if you're in a dangerous situation, you kind of want a protector. Like if you're a young child, a lot of times you'll think of an older brother as a possible protector, so you'll end up forming like that kind of personality. Mm-hmm. And so there are a lot of more specifics into that, which I like this topic. But that's how we concluded it, because like, the protector, the violent one, and the real condition, there aren't very many violent ones, but portrayed in the media it is, so it's kind of a safe bet. And Miss Miller having no clue about any of these people, and there just being so many ifs in the thing. And like, Miss Miller, it's easy to assume based on the way the story was written that Miss Miller is the narrator. And so, but they don't specify how her husband died. So if she didn't have those memories, but Miriam did, then that would explain the way that she doesn't know how her husband died.
That's interesting. So how does this relate to your career?
Really?
Yes.
Psychology!
Really? I didn't hear you say it.
I was like, I thought that would have been obvious.
It is obvious, but I still wanted to hear it from you, because what if you had said something else and had a really good reason for it? Then I would want to hear it, you know?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But like, also, like, my cousin wants to be basically the person who sits and talks with you and talks about your symptoms and finds out like what you have and then sends you off somewhere, like medical. Like, you might have like a strained muscle, but you don't know it, and so you'll tell her like, what pain are you, she'll ask you, what pain are you feeling, that kind of thing. That's what she wants to be when she grows up.
Kind of like House, kind of like a diagnostic person. There's a whole other name for it though, which I didn't even know all about until she told us all about it.
So basically, what I want to do is I want to kind of do that. Like, I kind of want to be a therapist in a way, because like, you would talk about that, and you would have to talk a lot about what's happening, because there are definitely a lot of possibilities and specifics. But you would basically find out what the problem is, and then help the person through it. And
so this is very interesting to me to hear, because Lucy's in honors English at the school she's at, and all of the students that are taking honors English are also taking a health class. But it's not like the typical health class that you would take somewhere else. It is a mental health class.
Not really. Well, it was in the first semester. I think they're changing. So
the first semester was about mental health and mental health disorders, and that can affect people your age, right?
So like
depression and things like that.
So like we talked about the health triangle, and the health triangle is mental / emotional health, physical health, and social health. And so mainly our first semester was talking about mental and emotional health, like depression, abuse, that kind of thing. And well, there are good things too, but like schizophrenia, that was one of them. But recently this week we've moved on to physical health, and towards the end of the year we'll be talking about social health, like go out and make new friends, because it does
You know,
hurt you.
I really think that this is an awesome class. You're obviously learning a lot in the class, but those are topics that are very important for students today, especially in light of the fact that some students are having mental breaks and shooting up schools and stuff like that, that you're learning how to recognize those things and how to combat them in yourself and to be able to talk about them intelligently, which is amazing.
So our health teacher, or our health book, mainly focuses on problems that the students or the students' family members are most likely to have, like depression, anxiety. Those were big topics for the mental health thing, and like they talked about how to go and get help, how to, like, with depression, it's not that you don't want help, it's that you psychologically can't justify that you need help. And it's like, you know logically that you need help, and you know why you need help. You could describe to a therapist exactly what was happening, but you can't convince yourself to go and get help because either you don't deserve it or what's the point. There are a lot of ifs with depression. So it basically talks about how to convince yourself to find help. And if you can't do that, how to kind of help yourself a little bit. It doesn't go too much into detail with that, but it does go into some detail. So if the student really can't get help, they can at least help themselves a little bit, that kind of thing. And it also talked about a lot of like psychological problems. I forget exactly what they all were now. My health teacher's gonna get mad about me if he watches this.
I don't think so, Lucy. I think he's going to be very impressed with you if he watches this.
So, what were they talking about? Oh, okay, I remember now. So, they're very relative to the students, the topic that they talk about in the book. And so, they also talked about how a lot of mental health issues you can't see, and like you will never know you have them. Like you watching this right now and me, we both might have a mental health issue, but we won't know it, and no one around us will know it. And do you want to know why that is? Why? Because your mind it's kind of like a mob mentality thing. You know what the mob mentality is? It's like where you follow the crowd, and that's a big thing. It's how humans learn languages, stuff like that. But also, it's how you learn how to act around other people. So if you are constantly, like, say you do have depression and you're constantly like down in the dumps, you think that life is pointless, you're still good. Like a lot of cases like that, the person still acts happily, and it's like nothing changed.
That's true. And I can say I know that's true because I suffer from depression. And I know that a lot of people comment all the time at work about how happy I am. And it's very easy to see, to get that impression because I act happy, but I know I have to take my medicine. And I totally see where you're coming from with this, because it's very easy for me to convince myself that I don't need the medicine. Or if I forgot to take it, oh, it's okay to skip it tonight, I'll be fine. I'm not going to be fine. I really need to take my medicine every day, twice a day. And if I'm not taking the medicine, I will have a problem. And that is something that I had to convince myself of, years of going on medicine and off medicine, on medicine and off medicine.
I need help, I don't need help. Yeah. I can't justify getting help. It's not that it's like maybe I can't justify it, but if I don't find a way to justify it, I'm in serious trouble. It's like that's a very awkward scale with depression.
And I'm old enough now and have dealt with this for so long that I do recognize fatalistic thinking in myself. So I don't necessarily recognize it immediately, but that's a big sign for me that I'm starting to spiral into depression. When I start to think the worst possible, when I take everything in the worst possible way. So if Daddy comes in the room and says, I love you, I don't hear I love you. I hear, you should have cleaned up the house. You should have, the floor's dirty. This is, like, it's crazy. Like, I hear a whole different thing. I take the tone of what's said, and or instead of I love you, I hear, you're my wife, I have to tell you I love you, but I really hate your guts because you're not doing a good enough job. That's very close to what I hear. So I have to be careful to know that when I get those fatalistic thoughts, to say, okay, something's wrong. Have you been taking your medicine? Usually the answer is no. And have you been doing this? Have you been doing that? Are you eating right? I haven't been eating well lately, and I can feel that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I have to be more thoughtful about taking care of myself, because allowing myself to spiral like that is really taking me away from you and Daddy. You know what I mean? Because I can't function. I will, and she's seen me do this, literally come home from work and go hide in a room and stay there for months, like not come out of my room. And I don't want that to be the way I live. And I have to know I have a problem and I have to fix it. And you're right. I'm like, everything you're saying is totally right.
And that's kind of where personality plays in. But like, when it comes to one thing versus the other thing, you technically have depression, right?
Right.
And you are like, when you go to work and like you're not like you're on your medicine kind of thing, mm-hmm. You're kind of happy-go-lucky, right?
Yeah.
And you're ecstatic when something good happens.
Yeah.
And then even when something bad happens, because then you're oftentimes like, oh, we can get through this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And you would never know. Like, I don't think anyone around us knows. No one except for me, my dad, and you know, and now you know that you have depression because you can't see that.
Right.
And
that's true.
Mm-hmm. And if you have depression and you think that why aren't they noticing? It's because it's not that you don't want other people to notice. It's that you're not doing anything to let other people see that.
I have a question for you. Obviously you're very interested in this because you've learned a lot about it, and you can talk about it, which is an even greater sign that you're very interested in it.
Like, that's something that Einstein said, right? It's like, you only understand something if you can explain it to someone else.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So tell me what life as a psychologist would be like, in your opinion. Like, obviously you don't know for sure.
Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like it would definitely make life interesting, because you're helping people with all these problems get through it, and you have to know exactly what to say, or you have to know exactly what opinions to share. You're not even if you completely disagree personally with something you're saying, you kind of have to say that in order to help the person get out of whatever funk they're in, right? So that's something I probably wouldn't like, is possibly lying about some personal opinion.
I don't think you should ever lie to someone.
But like, what I was thinking with that is like, there are some cases where that might end up happening, because like a lot of times with a therapist or with a psychiatrist, they're helping you through something emotional. That's actually all of the time, but what I mean by that is maybe you were abused mentally, and maybe you were raised in an atheist family, so you maybe like that person was taught only to, or maybe it's a Christian family, something like that. Any religion or non-religion, they might have been raised to only communicate with people of that religion or non-religion. And that is definitely a thing that you have to get over, and in some cases you do have to go to get professional help for that, because not everyone in your workplace is going to be a part of the same religion as you unless you work in a church, which that is a lot of times the case for people like that. But they also,
even in a church though, people believe different things.
Yeah, like with atheism, you might believe it's okay to say, like, to, you know, pretend to pray, or to, you know, pretend to pray about something when you personally believe that you're not praying to anybody. But there might be someone else who's also an atheist who believes that that's not okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of variations of everything. But you do have to get professional help if you think that there is, or like, you do a lot of times have to get professional help if you're trying to go into like a workplace or something, or a school, anywhere that people have another opinion. And I forget what it's called, but like getting really upset when someone has another opinion, that is a mental disorder. I think, maybe not. So to conclude what I was saying, a lot of times you have to get professional help to learn how to be with another group of people. And sometimes you have, even if you're an atheist and you're talking to a person who's Christian, a lot of times, so in order to trust that person, you have to know their religion or non-religion. And so you ask them, what religion are you? And so the psychologist, in order to help you, might have to lie in that case, because maybe they're a Christian and you're an atheist and they're trying to help you to work with other people. Then sometimes you have to say, oh, I'm an atheist too, so that they trust you.
No, you do not.
I feel like, no. I feel like that would be a big thing, just because if they don't trust you from the get-go, then they're gonna be on kind of iffy on everything you say.
Yeah, Lucy, if you think of it this way, if you ever lie about something, it is going to come out. So what if you develop a very strong relationship with a patient and they do trust you, and you have told them that you're an atheist when you're really a Christian, and then later on they happen to visit your church or something and realize that you lied to them from the very beginning, from the very first day they were in your office, then you've just undone all of the hard work that you have put into that person.
That is a very good point, and I didn't think about that.
But you're learning. There's lots of questions and lots of theories, and I'm glad that you brought that up, actually, because I know that it is easier sometimes to lie to people. Definitely that will make your path easier, but I don't think that it's the best thing to do. I obviously believe that it's wrong, but I think that it leads to some very serious consequences down the road.
I think after hearing you say that, I kind of agree. But so that was probably the main negated reason why I would be hesitant to be a psychiatrist or psychologist or as therapist.
I think it's still something you should explore if you're interested in.
What I was gonna say is that's the negative. That's apparently not true. Well, so the positive side to that would be, I get to help people. I get to help people. Okay, it's kind of like surgery, but not really. So if I say something wrong, then I can slowly undo that and slowly work back on that. If I were to be a surgeon and I were to tap the wrong organ and cut you open, there might not be any undoing that.
Yeah.
So it's like, I would want to work in the medical field, like that kind of medical field, if that wasn't a possibility. Unfortunately, it is. And also like memorizing parts of like the body and like exactly what bones are here, exactly what cartilage is here, exactly what muscles here. That seems like history class.
It is. It's a lot of memorization.
And while history right now is my highest grade, for a long time history had been my lowest grade, because there are a lot of topics in history that I'm not interested in, and if I'm not interested in something, I'm not gonna remember it.
You're my girl. I think it's very interesting to listen to you and see how your mind works. I only have a few more years of listening to you like this. Well, I mean, I'm going to listen to you for your whole life, but a few more years of you living with me, I'm sure one day you're going to want to move out, although I hope that never happens.
Fortunately, I'm the only child, so she has this mentality. If I had a brother or sister, you might let me move out more easily.
Yeah. Well, you turn 18 and you decide you want to move out. I will let you move out. I might cry a lot.
Might. Excuse me, don't lie to yourself.
But you know what? I want you to have a happy life, and I want you to be the person that God designed you to be.
Let's see. I'm 13 right now. The age where I could potentially move out is 18. Oh, that's 5 years.
Isn't that crazy?
And I didn't even register until I just said that. Oh my god. That's like less than half of my life currently. Wow. That's scary.
I know. But you don't have to. There's no pressure. Daddy and I both will let you live here as long as you want to.
I know.
Well, bye guys.
Bye.
Have a great day. See you next time for our next Pajama Talk.